Lutnick, last week, you said about Canada's economic strategy, and I quote, "They suck." How does insulting our closest ally and neighbor help the businesses in my state of New Hampshire and states all across this country, Secretary, but insulting our closest ally and neighbor who provides a lot of business? We have a lot of businesses in New Hampshire, small businesses who work on both sides of the border. We have all those Canadian visitors who are not coming because of your comments and comments by the administration. How does that help our economy?
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
And they won't do it because of the insults from this president and comments like yours.
Canada is America's largest trading partner and closest ally. So when the Commerce Secretary publicly mocked its economy, Senator Jeanne Shaheen demanded to know one thing: how does that help American businesses?
Last year, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the United States saw a 5.5% decline in international visitors. We were the only major economy to see any decline. In my home state of New Hampshire, tourism is the second largest industry, both by revenue, and it supports 70,000 jobs. Canada has long been our largest share of foreign visitors, but last year we saw a 30% drop in Canadian tourism, largely due to the loss of trust and goodwill because of this administration's rhetoric around Canada. Secretary Lutnick, last week you said about Canada's economic strategy, and I quote, "They suck." I believe your spokesperson then said this was about Canada's economy leeching off of the U.S. How does insulting our closest ally and neighbor help the businesses in my state of New Hampshire and states all across this country who are hurting because of the loss of Canadian business and tourism?
Canada's economy leans on the incredible $30 trillion economy of America. But
there's no doubt about that, Mr. Secretary. But insulting our closest ally and neighbor who provides a lot of business, we have a lot of businesses in New Hampshire, small businesses who work on both sides of the border. We have all those Canadian visitors who are not coming because of your comments and comments by the administration. How does that help our economy?
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
And they won't do it because of the insults from this president and comments like yours. So I want to go on to another question.
But can I have just one small comment, which is dairy is treated so badly, and your state cares about dairy, and we are trying desperately to get them to live to the deal that they have on USMCA and stop treating our dairy farmers so poorly, and your state cares about that, and we are fighting for that.
We do, but we are not going to get agreement when we keep insulting people.
Since this hearing, trade negotiations between the U.S. and Canada have continued ahead of the scheduled USMCA review, while tourism and cross-border commerce remain key issues for businesses on both sides of the border.
We have allies and partners. We should try and work with them, not insult them. And I find your rhetoric insulting to the people in my state who are working so hard to try and ensure that they can do business. I want to move on to BEAD and the non-deployment funds, because Secretary Lutnick, as I said the last time you were here, Senator Collins and I led the negotiations around the bipartisan infrastructure law and those broadband provisions. And when we enacted BEAD into law, as Chairman Moran said, we understood that any remaining funds after broadband deployment would be used for adoption. New Hampshire was promised nearly $200 million in BEAD funding, yet only $18.6 million has been awarded for deployment. That means New Hampshire has nearly $180 million left for non-deployment activities. So when can we expect guidance from NTIA on how states can spend the estimated $21 billion in remaining non-deployment BEAD funds?
We finished our listening tour. We took the comments, over 280 comments and 1,000 people who spoke to us. We are narrowing the gap. We will make sure that we are covering all broadband access, and we will have a plan that we would be happy to discuss with you, as I said, within the coming months.
And do you have a deadline for when you're hoping to get that plan to us?
My
Other than
objective,
soon?
well, my objective was to start by getting the money out and getting America the benefit of the bargain, which we've done, right? 54 states and territories executed and out the door finally, right? This is getting the money out the door. But I would expect over the next 2 months we will have our plan in place, and we will be happy to discuss it with you.
Since this hearing, the Commerce Department has continued implementing semiconductor and technology initiatives under the CHIPS program, while states have continued working with federal officials on broadband deployment, with the focus remaining on getting infrastructure projects moving faster.
Okay, I only have a few seconds left, but in your confirmation hearing last year, you said that the United States needed to stop China from, and I quote, using our tools to compete with us. And you specifically called out U.S. companies for advancing Beijing's AI ambitions. Since then, the administration has allowed powerful chips to be exported to China. Can you assure us today that the administration is going to stop those chip sales to China that would advance its military modernization? We heard yesterday at the Armed Services Committee from Admiral Paparo, who expressed concern about China being able to access those advanced chips.
There is a delicate balance in the relationship with China. President Trump has the best relationship with President Xi, and he balances that. I want to be crystal clear. We are not selling our best chips to China under any circumstance. We are not even selling the best scale of chips, meaning they're called Blackwell. They're not even that brand. This is multi-years ago, and there's that balance, and I understand that balance, but the president understands it the best, and he is trying to balance in between there. I would tell you they have not bought any as of today.
Well, I'm out of time, Mr. Secretary, but I would urge you to look at the intelligence on the chips, because that is not what the intelligence says about what we are selling to China.
Since this April 22, 2026 Senate Appropriations Committee hearing, each of the three issues Senator Jeanne Shaheen raised, U.S. Canada relations, the BEAD broadband program, and AI chip exports to China, has continued to generate significant congressional attention. On the Canada front, trade tensions remain high as the Trump administration continued pressing Ottawa over dairy market access, alcohol sales, and broader trade practices under the USMCA. Canadian officials refused to reverse several retaliatory measures immediately, while tourism organizations on both sides of the border continued reporting weaker cross-border travel compared with previous years. Senator Shaheen repeatedly argued that inflammatory rhetoric toward Canada was harming small businesses, tourism, and regional economies in northern border states, while the administration maintained that tougher trade negotiations were necessary to secure fairer treatment for American producers. The disagreement also continued as both governments prepared for broader USMCA discussions and additional trade negotiations. The broadband and technology issues discussed during the hearing also evolved after Secretary Howard Lutnick's testimony. The Commerce Department completed its nationwide review of the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment BEAD program and continued developing guidance for states regarding billions of dollars in remaining non-deployment funding after broadband infrastructure awards. Meanwhile, Congress continued closely scrutinizing the administration's semiconductor policy after the administration permitted exports of certain lower-tier NVIDIA AI chips to China while maintaining restrictions on the company's most advanced Blackwell processors. The decision prompted bipartisan concern that even less advanced chips could contribute to China's artificial intelligence and military modernization. At subsequent hearings, Secretary Lutnick reaffirmed that the United States would not permit exports of its most advanced AI chips to China and stated that no Blackwell chips had been sold to Chinese buyers, while several lawmakers continued requesting stronger export controls and additional intelligence briefings regarding China's access to American semiconductor technology. The hearing itself highlighted two very different approaches to strengthening the American economy. Senator Jeanne Shaheen argued that successful economic policy depends not only on defending American industries, but also on maintaining strong relationships with long-standing allies. Using New Hampshire's tourism industry as an example, she warned that public insults directed at Canada could discourage visitors, reduce cross-border commerce, and ultimately hurt American businesses that rely on Canadian customers. Her questions focused on whether political rhetoric can produce unintended economic consequences, even when broader trade disputes involve legitimate policy disagreements. Secretary Howard Lutnick defended the administration's approach by arguing that long-standing trade imbalances required a more aggressive negotiating strategy. He pointed to Canada's treatment of American dairy products and restrictions affecting U.S. alcoholic beverages as evidence that the United States needed to push back more forcefully during trade negotiations. From his perspective, strong public criticism was part of a broader effort to secure better market access for American producers rather than an attempt to damage the bilateral relationship itself. The exchange also reflected a larger debate over how allies should resolve economic disputes. Shaheen emphasized diplomacy, mutual respect, and preserving goodwill between neighboring countries whose economies remain deeply interconnected. Lutnick focused instead on leverage, arguing that unfair trade practices should be confronted directly even if doing so creates short-term diplomatic friction. Both approaches sought stronger economic outcomes for the United States, but relied on very different negotiating philosophies. Another major topic involved the BEAD broadband expansion program. Rather than questioning the value of expanding broadband access, Shaheen sought greater certainty about when states would receive guidance allowing them to use remaining funds for digital adoption, workforce training, affordability initiatives, and other non-construction purposes. Her questions reflected concerns shared by many state governments that delays in federal guidance could slow implementation of projects already authorized by Congress. The hearing concluded with another important national security issue: advanced semiconductor exports to China. Shaheen questioned whether existing export policies were sufficiently protecting sensitive American technology from supporting China's military modernization. Lutnick responded that the administration was maintaining restrictions on the most advanced AI processors while attempting to balance economic competition with broader diplomatic and trade objectives. That discussion illustrated the increasingly difficult challenge of balancing commercial interests, technological leadership, and national security in an era where advanced computing has become central to both economic growth and military capability. Looking back, the hearing demonstrated how trade policy, infrastructure investment, and technology competition are becoming increasingly interconnected. Decisions affecting tourism, broadband deployment, and semiconductor exports all influence America's long-term economic competitiveness, relationships with allies, and strategic position in the global economy. The questions raised during this exchange continue to shape congressional oversight as lawmakers debate how best to protect American workers while maintaining strong international partnerships and preserving U.S. leadership in emerging technologies.